We're back in Leading Edge talking about the huge rulings out of the Ohio Supreme Court regarding districts and redistricting following the 2020 census. And it ruled that both the legislative districts, that's Columbus, that's the State House, that's the State Senate, and our congressional districts, as those maps are unconstitutional, we're back to the drawing board. You know, one legislative leader down there, the Senate President, Mia Lewis, my guest, by the way, from Common Cause, Ohio, quoted as saying, I'm going to quote here, "We don't know how this gets done." And I'm thinking, well, hey, weren't numerous maps which actually do meet the letter of the constitutional law submitted and summarily ignored during the process? That might be one place to start.
Absolutely. So both for the legislative process and the congressional process, there was a portal which was required in the law for citizens to be able to submit their maps. Many individuals did, many organizations did. Our organization had a competition. We submitted our competition winners. Now, I will say it is true that the legislative maps, it is difficult. Those are difficult rules because you have 99 House districts and the Senate, that 3 House districts have to be nested within a Senate district. And there are all sorts of rules about splits and proportionality. So it's tricky. But the point is you have to try, and you have to try to do it fairly with the aim of representing Ohioans, not of benefiting a political party.
And again, 99 House seats, 33 Senate seats. That's the ratio Mia Lewis is referring to. And right now, the Republicans hold a supermajority in both chambers of the Ohio legislature, despite the fact that the Constitution says we should try to reflect the statewide vote, which is something over the past decade more like 54-46, which leads me now to the congressional maps. 15 congressional seats. We lost one, folks, because of the census. These were approved not by a commission, but by the Ohio legislature. The Supreme Court seemed to pick on something that your organization, Fair Districts Ohio, had highlighted as being unfair, and that is some of the state's biggest counties. Cuyahoga, folks, that's Cleveland. Hamilton, folks, that's Cincinnati. Summit, folks, that's Akron, had been, in the court's word, and I quote, unduly split. Remind me what that means and why that's important.
Yep. So in gerrymandering, you have 2 concepts, packing and cracking. So we want to have roughly equal numbers of population in different districts, but you could spread population out so that, let's say, Democrats win in 2 areas, or you could draw the districts so that all the Democrats are squished into one area. That's called packing, and then they only get 1 seat. Or if you crack them, that's splitting them out and spreading them around. So think about Cuyahoga County. If you cut it into 3, you can put a little bit of Democratic voters in each of those 3, and then they get fewer districts. So that's what the court said, is you've been splitting these big counties in such a way that you're diluting the Democratic vote on purpose in order to take these areas, which are predominantly Democratic, and yet somehow they end up being represented by Republicans.
Help me understand this, then. Follow right along. Under the map ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court, Republicans could easily, you and I talked about this on the last show, expect to carry 12, maybe even 13 of the state's 15 congressional seats. So to be fair, all right, do Democrats need more locked in districts, or do we all need more districts that are truly in play? They could go either way.
Well, I think what the court is saying is that you don't know for sure what the outcome is going to be, but you're looking at projected outcome, and they're looking for, essentially they're looking for more of those locked down districts. It's great to have competitiveness. Everyone wants competitive elections, but sometimes that can be used to kind of rig results where something is quote competitive, but it isn't really. If something's really a toss-up, great. But what we want to do is make sure that Ohio voters are represented. You don't have a group of voters who year after year, election after election, are not able to elect someone who will represent their voices. So you want to try to figure out drawing districts in such a way that it roughly reflects how people actually vote, so that people will have representation.
Mia Lewis is my guest from Columbus. So play this out for me. And I'm not asking you to have a crystal ball, but you have followed the process and lived with it. What's the end game that everyone can live with? I mean, does any workable, read that, constitutional solution, is this going to have to go before a court again, do we think?
I don't I don't believe so, because the Ohio Supreme Court is the court of record for these cases because it has to do with the Ohio Constitution. That's in the amendment that was included. The Supreme Court of the United States has already said that it has essentially nothing to say about gerrymandering unless it has to do with the Voting Rights Act and racial gerrymandering, which doesn't really come into play in Ohio here. Right. So this really should be the end of this. I think that Governor DeWine, when he opened the hearing on, I guess it was Tuesday, said the court has ruled, they've given us our instructions, now we have to go and draw these maps. And they certainly should be able to. There have been plenty of citizen maps submitted that are perfectly constitutional.
If I may add, thank you, Governor, but a little late to the game. I think we already knew what the Constitution said. I think we already knew what the voters said. We're the ones that really authored those amendments, folks, and voted for them. My thanks to Mia Lewis, Common Cause, for keeping us on the leading edge of ongoing efforts to carve out fair districts in our state's legislature and congressional delegation. Be well. When I come back, I'm throwing a flag on college football, their Hall of Fame, for delay of game, but also giving the Hall a play, if you will, for finally inviting my next guest, Chuck Ely, in. This is Leading Edge.